Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. Today I'm going to be continuing the Great House podcast, this time with another house, a major one from the Second Age, although it technically stretches all the way into the Third Age. But I'm only going to focus on a part of its history, so without further ado, let's get started on an examination of the House of Andunie. Elaton was a nobleman who was lord of the city of Andunie during the early centuries of Numenor. He ended up wedding Silmarion, daughter of Tar Elendil. Silmarion had a strong claim to the throne, but did not push forward her claim, humbly accepting the act of paying homage to her brother, recognizing that it was perhaps best to forego the throne in order to avoid conflict. Elaton and Silmarion were succeeded by their son. Valandil had a great claim to the throne of Numenor, but like his mother, he didn't push the claim. He was a close cousin of Aldarion and hosted 2 feasts for him in Andunie. The first feast was on the 100th birthday of the founding of the Guild of Venturers, and the second was in 870 of the Second Age, when the newly wedded Aldarion and Arendis visited. Next on the block, well, we don't know, as the lords of Andunie were not all filled out in the lore. During the reign of Tar and Calaman, it happened that the lords of Andunie became members of the Elendili faction. That is to say, those who were faithful to the old alliances with the elves and the Valar. So that in this way, they made themselves radically unpopular with the ruling house of Numenor. That being said, they never faltered in their allegiance. Though they attempted to dissuade the kings of Numenor from wickedness, they never forswore loyalty to them. It was in the time of Gimil Zagar that Lindorie, daughter of the 14th Lord of Andunie, agreed to wed Gimil Zagar. Lindorie bore a daughter, Inzilbeth, and it would be Inzilbeth who would wed Gimilzor, and bore him 2 sons, Inziladun and Gimilcad. She passed her faithful ways on to her elder son, who took the throne as Tar Palantir, and was the last faithful king of Numenor, while Gimilcad had his father's belief systems passed down to him, and would pass them later down to Ar-Pharazôn. The 15th Lord of Andunie was Eorender. He was brother of Lindorie. His name means professional mariner, or servant of the sea, and he would be succeeded by his son Numendil. Numendil was Lord of Andunie, son of Eorender. His name means friend of the West, which is rather fitting considering Numenor is often named Westernessy, and Numen seems to be, in Quenya, west. Thus, Numen and Dil meaning friend, or it's also Dilly, so Numendil, friend of the West. And this is quite the interesting setup for the name. The next Lord of Andunie that we know of was Amandil. He was a dear friend of Ar-Pharazôn in their youth, and he would end up stripped of his titles for supporting the faithful when Sauron came to power in Numenor, and the downfall of Numenor took place, with Amandil going to Aman to warn the Valar. He was succeeded by his son Elendil, suitably named, as Elendil the Tall was an extremely elf-friendly nobleman whom led the last of the Elendili away from Numenor to their colonies in Middle-earth, and would found Arnor, while his sons Isildur and Anarion would found Gondor. Isildur is well known to everyone who's familiar with the story of Lord of the Rings. It was he who claimed the One Ring after his father and Gil-galad had slain Sauron, though at the cost of their own lives. Isildur would carry the ring for a time, the ambush that claimed his life. He would be succeeded by his own sons, and thus begin the line of Arnor, which will be discussed in a later video. As to Anarion, it'd be from him that the kings of Gondor would be descended. Well, Anarion was noteworthy for having built a great many of the palaces and whatnot, fine estates of Gondor alongside his brother. Though where Isildur is noted for having rescued a seedling of the White Tree from Numenor, Anarion's feats are less well known, though he was no less a hero and a great man. And that's it. That's all we know about the House of Andunie. This house is going to play a role in the Rings of Power, of course, as Elendil the Tall will be appearing in the series. He is heir to the House of Andunie, as his father, Amandil is Lord of Andunie, with it likely going into some part of the War of the Last Alliance at some point. Thus, we might actually see the founding of Arnor and Gondor in the series. But that's a video for another time. Tell me what you think of this video. Which would you prefer to see? A history of Narsil or a history of the founding of Arnor and Gondor? I'm open to either, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button as though you were Sauron trying to smash Gil-galad into pieces.